Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of CVM versus somebody. We do have Kenny Castor with us again this week as BBD is recovering from his trip to Dublin for Pro Tour Theros. And we are playing some decks from the top 8 of Pro Tour Theros. I hope everybody is excited as I am, and I know Kenny is.
Oh yeah.
So I'm actually going to be playing the green-red devotion deck that Makihito Mihara placed in the top 4 of the Pro Tour with. And I'm really excited to try this deck out. It seems very powerful. At first glance, you think it's just a bunch of mana accelerants and big monsters to accelerate into. But I honestly feel like this deck is more of a combo deck.
Yeah, agreed.
So the idea is that we have Sylvan Caryatid, Voyaging Satyr, and Elvish Mystic to ramp us into some of our larger creatures that are undercosted, like Polykranos and Arbor Colossus. But then we also have Garrett Caller of Beasts as the very top of our curve. That's just going to draw us into a bunch more cards so that we can play them and kill our opponents with them. Right. And the big cornerstone of this is Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. So I know that you were working on a Nykthos deck last week, and we actually played a mono blue deck at the Classic in Raleigh with Nykthos.
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of, if not the best cards in the format. What do you think about Nykthos?
Yeah, the card is just so powerful. They haven't printed cards like these since like Tolarian Academy or Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all know that those cards are just broken. And this is really just a whole nother level to it. I mean, paying 2 mana really isn't anything. Before it was just insane, and now it's
definitely
a little under insane, but definitely still up there.
For sure. Now I think that one of the biggest drawbacks to the cycle of cards like Gaia's Cradle and Tolarian Academy was that it didn't just add mana by itself if you didn't meet any of the requirements for the card, whereas Nykthos does. So you can still just like jam it on 2 to play your Sylvan Caryatid or your Voyaging Satyr.
Yeah,
which is really awesome for it. But we also get the benefit that those old lands have from the new Legendary rule.
Oh yeah.
So with the new Legendary rule, I'm sure everybody is familiar, but we'll recap it because it's important, is that when you control 2 Legendary permanents with the same name, you get to choose which one you keep and which one dies. So if we can tap a Nykthos for 1 billion mana, we can play another Nykthos, keep that one, and then add another 1 billion mana to our mana pool and just cast all the spells. So that makes it very important. And that also plays something in with Garrett Caller of Beasts. So we can +1 the Garrett that we have, make a bunch of mana, draw a bunch of cards, play another Garrett,
right,
+1 that one to draw a bunch more cards, and even go from there. And on the same vein with how powerful Nykthos is, we're actually playing Voyaging Satyr, so it's just a 1/2 for 2 mana that accelerates us by untapping a land, but it doesn't have to untap a basic land. It can be any land.
Yeah.
And Nykthos is any land.
I'm wondering how many drafts he did where he had Voyaging Satyr and Nykthos, and just because I think that Voyaging Satyr is probably one of the best commons that you can draft out of Theros.
It definitely is. I think Satyr and Nestian Asp rival each other for the best green common, if not one of the best commons in the set for limited.
And just being able to use it with the Nykthos is just, it's not only can you play an additional copy, you can untap it and just do all these crazy things, make tons of mana. I saw a picture online where it was just like he had basically his whole deck was in play. And it was like turn 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, because we're able to make all of this mana, we get to play Polykranos as a way to, it's just a cheap fatty, a 5/5 for 4. But his monstrous ability is very relevant in this deck since we can generate so much mana. It's basically going to allow us just to kill all of our opponent's creatures so that the rest of our deck can keep attacking them. Arbor Colossus is just a 6/6 for 5 that can kill a Night Veil Spectre when you make him go monstrous.
Yeah.
But he also can kill a Stormbreath Dragon and even blocks both of those creatures very well too. So I really like Arbor Colossus. We do have Scavenging Ooze to gain some life when needed. Nylea gives us a mana dump for all of our extra mana to pump our creatures, and giving all of our monsters trample is going to be very, very relevant.
Right.
And then we also just get to play these value planeswalkers with Xenagos and Domri Raid. So Xenagos fits along the same theme of making a bunch of mana, since we're playing a bunch of mana guys, which is awesome. Yeah. And then Domri lets us either draw cards or fight our opponent's creatures.
I was surprised to not see more of the Xenagos in the deck, but I mean, like I said, I mean, I've never really even seen the whole deck actually work, so this is going to be really exciting. But it's definitely one of those cards where, you know, you play it Ritual, and then I don't know if you want to play like another one in Ritual, or it can also be like against a control deck, you know, where you just make a 2/2 haster and just get them and just slowly grind them out that way. And that's one of the things that I really like about this deck is that, you know, it has this really early game that just like pushes you towards the top if you're playing against like a mono red deck or some type of like early aggression deck, where you just play all these, you know, just guys that make mana, and then you like drop your big bombs, and built-in bonfire on Polychronos is really good. And
yeah. Now the really neat thing in this deck is, and I think is one of the cards that kind of pulls it all together, is Burning Tree Emissary. Now, I am not a huge proponent of the card. I've lost to it a lot, and I hate losing to it because it's one of the few cards in Magic that there's not a lot of ways to, you know, interact with it if your opponent has the right draws with the card. And in this deck, it still gives you that same kind of oomph, if you will, where you can just go like mana guy into Emissary, double mana guy, and then play a Nykthos and just, you know, make a million mana.
Right.
But it holds, you know, it holds everything together, gives the deck the ability to do that. Also, it's a way to filter all of our green mana into red mana for our planeswalkers if we need to on turns 3 and turns 4. And it is just very, very good with Nykthos, allowing us to cast multiple spells in a turn and turn on the Devotion for Nykthos is just...
Right, and he's usually one of the cards that aren't really seen in like a bigger type of deck. Is, you know, just really aggressive. A free 2/2 is, you know, what they're basically using it for.
Yeah.
But in this case, you know, not only are they using it for the free 2/2
that rituals you.
Yeah, and fixes your
Every
mana
turn.
and adds double devotion, and
definitely,
yeah, it's very powerful.
And because it's red green, and you know the Gruul Guild was in Gatecrash, we do actually get the temple. All of the temples in this set are the Gatecrash guilds, if you hadn't noticed. So we also get the temple to help try and filter our draws. And I mean, the deck is just very powerful, and I'm ready to play an unfair deck. So I'm definitely excited. Let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard and see what type of options we have for a streamlined, you know, combo aggro mid-range deck like this. All right, welcome back for the sideboard, everybody, for the green-red Devotion deck from Makihito Mihara from Protor Theros. Now, looking over here at the sideboard, we have some interesting cards that we haven't seen in a while, as well as quite a few of two ofs and one ofs. So, Burning Earth is used to be a very good card when the format was all like blue, white, red, and Jund before the rotation. But now it's seen a huge decline in popularity. But Mihara has opted to play a couple in his sideboard, and I think that's pretty good. Just because, like, when you're going into one of the first big tournaments of a new format where, you know, one of the blocks is very focused on playing, you know, 3 or more colors, I think a card like Burning Earth is something that you can kind of lean back on and hope you can just get them sometimes. Yeah. But I can imagine a lot of times he would cast it and just, like, have the same number of non-basics and play as his opponent, even though they were playing 3 colors. Yeah. Do you think Burning Earth is something that we still want to be on moving forward, or is it something that could be changed?
I mean, with all the Devotion decks, then I think it's probably not very good, but, you know, there's still, like, Esper decks, which it's not bad against Esper if they don't have, like, a Detention Sphere counter for it. But, you know, it's, like you said, you know, it's definitely a card that can get people. You know, if they're just caught with their pants down, then go ahead and...
You just get them.
Yeah.
Liar, liar, pants on fire, the Burning Earth. Now we have Chandra Pyromaster next. I really like this card. I'm actually surprised there aren't any in the main deck, but I can, you know, see why we kind of wanted to push it to the sideboard, being as it doesn't add to our Devotion to Green, which is what we're, you know, focusing the deck on. But the card itself is just way too good to not have somewhere in the 75. And I can imagine that Mihara didn't think there was going to be as many mono blue Devotion decks as there were, as we see that there is just one Mistcutter Hydra and no Skylashers in the sideboard. But Mistcutter Hydra is a very good card against the Devotion decks, especially when we can generate 1 billion mana. So a lot of times we might even just be able to kill them in, you know, 2 attacks, 1 attacks, you know, just get a bunch of mana. So I'm excited for the Mistcutter Hydra, and I imagine this is a card that's going to see a lot more play moving forward, so you might want to pick them up if you don't have them.
Especially this weekend. If you're playing the mono blue deck at the Grand Prix, I definitely suggest you have an answer for Mistcutter Hydra.
Yeah. Good luck. We do have Destructive Revelry is just a Disenchant Shock You, which is fine. Sylvan Primordial is just a, you know, a way to ramp and set your opponent back and ramp even more.
Yeah.
I imagine it's for like detention spheres out of the
Another
Esper type decks,
disenchant.
but it also hits Planeswalkers as well. So
Yeah.
like you can hit Jace, you can hit Elspeth, you can hit Ashiok, you just
Yeah.
whatever you need to hit. I imagine it's probably kind of cute in the mirror too. You just whoever gets
blows
Garruk
up
online
Nykthos.
first. Yeah, it blows up Nykthos and Garruk's.
Yeah.
Wasteland Viper is just a very good card against like the red decks as an early blocker, against like any of the aggressive Naya decks. But it also allows us to like push through damage against cards like Boros Reckoner without taking a bunch of damage back, Loxodon Smiter, Wall of Frost, as we saw from the Pro Tour out of people's sideboards. So Wasteland Viper, might start to see a little more play. Now this Disciple is just going to gain us a bunch of life against the red decks. We have an extra Xenagos against the control decks, and then some Mizium Mortars is a way to just kill a bunch of creatures that they're just trying to flood the field.
Right.
We can generate a whole bunch of mana. Nykthos for red with a Burning Tree Emissary out will give us almost enough red mana to overload Mizium Mortars if we need to. So like the fact that it's triple red isn't going to be that big of an issue for us. But this is the sideboard. I'm not going to lie, I wish I had some more Mistcutter Hydras in my sideboard for the matchup that we're playing today. However, we are going to battle it like what happened at the PT, and hopefully I don't get crushed like Mahara did, because he lost 3-0. So let's go ahead and take a look at Kenny's deck, and then we can get to battling.